Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to our show. My name is Jacob, Senior Acquisitions Manager with Wholesaling OutOfTheBox.com, and I will be your host for today's episode. Today, we're going to be listening to the second half of our director's commentary from last week. For any of you who did not get a chance to listen to last week's episode, I highly suggest that you go back and start there before continuing with today's podcast. Main reason for that, of course, is you're going to have a better understanding as far as what the context is of this conversation with the seller, and you're going to understand where we started, where the conversation left off, and then today, of course, you'll understand ultimately where it's going to go and how it's going to end. So that said, to bring you up to speed, this conversation was a cold call to a probate lead. The key thing that I want you all to listen for is the emotional and the empathetic side of this conversation. That is ultimately what got me in front of this seller before any other investor was even given the opportunity. Emotional intelligence, or EQ, goes a long way in this business. Fact of the matter is that people's homes are personal, right? And you have to be aware of that, and you have to listen for that when it shows itself in these conversations, because that's really what it's all about. It's all about understanding and getting to know the seller on a more personal level so that you can build the relationship with them. That is what is going to lead to you ultimately getting more deals to the table, and it's just going to lead to a more successful, better business over the course of time. If you can learn how to create that relationship and that rapport over the phone, it's only going to continue, of course, when you go on the walkthrough, and then that's what's going to get you to the closing table. So that's the main reason that we started with this conversation as far as episode 2 is concerned. And I hope that you guys are able to pick that up, and I hope that you're able to hear that and learn from it moving forward. Now, as always, before we dive in, I do want you guys to keep in mind the following. These call breakdowns are meant to serve as examples only, okay? The conversations vary for a number of different reasons, and you're all going to need to learn how to pivot conversations as necessary in order to be truly successful with the sellers over the phone. You're going to have to learn to roll with the punches. It's as simple as that. So these calls will change, but again, the goal behind putting these in front of you, of course, is over the course of time. Once the library of these episodes is fully built, you should have almost a little bit of everything in there at that point to be able to go back and try out new techniques and so on, and try to improve the result. Number 2, I am not an expert, and I am not perfect. I will be the first person to tell you that. Everything you're about to hear is based on my experience and literally hundreds of hours listening to content about sales, negotiations, and human psychology. I listened to my own recordings for years before I was able to get to the point that I'm at today. And it's likely that many of you are probably going to have to do that same thing. And that's okay. You know, for some people, talking comes naturally. For others, takes some work. So, but just know that if you sincerely spend the time and you go out and you fail over and over and over again, I promise you, you will eventually adapt and overcome. Okay? In order for that last part to really happen, the last thing that I do want to ask you guys is that if you are not recording your calls currently, please make that a priority. The fact is that when you listen to your own recordings, you're going to begin to identify what your weaknesses are and what you need to focus on to improve, and that's what it's all about. It's all about getting better every day. Okay, now that that's out of the way, without further delay, let's get started on today's call.
Yeah, sure. So great question. So in short, I'll try to recap this and summarize it as best I can. But what I would do is I would meet you guys at the property. Before I do that, I would do a market analysis of what things are selling for in your neighborhood. You know, number of bedrooms, baths, and so on, and then of course based on condition. From my perspective, of course, again, you know, we are looking at it from an investment standpoint. So it is something we look to make money on, of course, to put it bluntly. So what I do is I basically look at what I think I can sell the property for when it is all fixed up, and then I basically just work backwards from there. I factor in how long I'm going to be holding the property and what those holding costs are going to be. I factor in the purchase price, of course, which is what we would ultimately agree to should you decide to work with us. And then I factor in the overall cost of the repairs that I would have to put back into it to get it up to that level. And then it's literally just running that calculation backwards and seeing what it comes out to. And then it's just a conversation, open and honestly, between us to figure out whether or not we can make that number work. And then if it doesn't, we can talk about what it looks like to refer you to Jay, who's our realtor that we work with, and we can always send you down that road as well. So, yeah. Does that kind of make sense? Do you guys have any questions for me, or?
It does make sense. I just wanted you to know that it would definitely be a fixer-upper, so I don't know, like.
Well, it is, yeah. So,
okay.
Typically, how long does a process like this take?
So as far as my portion of the process goes, I will be able to give you a firm offer by the time I leave the appointment. So if we set up a time tomorrow or Wednesday, whatever day works better for you, I'll be able to have that conversation with you in person while I'm on site, and I can review all of that information with you so that you can understand where I'm coming from and why. And then it's literally just, like I said, it's just an honest conversation about whether or not that number would work for you. Now, that being said, there are a couple of things that I cannot do when I'm on the property. I'm not qualified to look at crawl spaces and so on. So like foundation repairs or any sort of crawl space type of inspection would be handled prior to like an actual closing date.
So that wouldn't be an issue.
Oh, okay. Well, very good then. So, yeah, so if that's the case, then I should be able to evaluate it pretty much to almost down to the T. Now, some of them are generalized, like I'll be honest with you, when it comes to things like electrical and things like plumbing, I don't always necessarily know what the plumbing structure is, whether or not it was original cast iron or if it's been updated. So there are a couple of things that need to be checked thoroughly after the fact. But I would hire an actual city inspector to come out and look at those things. Should we ultimately decide to move forward, and the goal, of course, is to never come back to you guys and have to do like a price reduction or anything along those lines. In the history of our business, we've been in business for 10 years. We've worked with over 100 different people, and I think I've only had to come back twice. So just to give you a heads up on that.
Okay, guys, so a couple of different things going on there as well, right? So the big thing that you guys heard it, and I said it when I started talking last time around, right? But Heather, the wife, comes right out and says that it's a fixer-upper. So immediately based on that, as far as all of my concerns on whether or not, we've got something that is of potential is pretty much out the window at that point, because the second that she says fixer-upper, I'm already thinking in my head that, okay, great, we've probably got somewhere between 30 and 40 grand worth of repairs right off the bat. And that's just your basic cosmetics, right? So that's the kitchens, the bathrooms, floors, paint, windows, maybe HVAC, right? So those are the things that are kind of going through my head. The second that she says the words fixer-upper, I already know that this is a property that needs to be rehabbed, right? So sounds like thus far, we've got something that could be a pretty good fit. Now I think in this portion of the conversation, you can kind of hear me talking about some of these things, right, as far as what the process looks like moving forward. I'm also starting to set the expectation as far as like, hey, I'm going to be able to give you all those numbers on site. There's a couple of things I can inspect for. And this is all true, right? I'm not a certified crawl space inspector. I can't do mold, moisture, and termite inspections. That's not me. So when we go to actually sign paperwork, those are inspections that happen after the fact. And of course, the goal is to never come back and have to ask for a price reduction, but occasionally that does happen. Okay. So again, this is kind of setting that expectation moving forward that, hey, we can come and we can talk about a number and so on, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the end all be all number at the end of the day. Now, that being said, it is true, 100%. We never try to go back and renegotiate a lower number unless it is absolutely required. The reason that we do that personally, that's just good business, right? I mean, we're in this business to help the seller. Obviously, we need to make a fee, and our time and marketing fees and everything have to be accounted for at the end of the day. But if you've got a hell of a spread on a deal and you have to come back because a buyer says, oh, I did a crawl space inspection and that crawl space inspection repairs came back at 10 grand, is there anything we can do, right? Or can you meet me halfway? So if you have a $20,000 spread on the deal or a $25,000 spread on the deal, and the buyer comes back and says, I need another five, you're still at a $15,000 to $20,000 profit. I mean, you do you, but I personally, and I think we as a company personally feel that that's just unnecessary. You don't need to do that. It's kind of being greedy, right? The one thing that we like to say in our organization is pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. It's 100% true. So that comes back to doing good business. We never really go back and ask for price reductions unless we absolutely have to. But that also comes along with making sure that you contract up at the right number at the beginning of the relationship and at the beginning of the property walkthrough and so on. If you contract up too high, obviously that one's on you. Now you're going to have to figure out a way to make it work. And at the end of the day, you should always go back and do what you said you were going to do. So that is being somebody who does good business. And that's what you're always going to hear from our company is do good business. Do what you said you were going to do. So that's a little off topic. Sorry I rabbit holed out, but I just want to cover that because that is important. I want you guys to understand that moving forward.
I tell you that because I want you to understand that. I want to be upfront and honest with you that it's always a possibility, but it's not something that we look to do. So yeah, in short, I should be able to do all of that while I'm on site with you, and I should be able to have that conversation. And if you guys made a decision to move forward or not, that would be fine.
And did I hear you say you're a veteran-owned company, or you work with veterans, or?
We've worked with veterans. We are not a veteran-owned company. Actually, Cameron is a veteran. He just retired out of the Air Force back in December, and then he came onto our team full time.
Air Force. Hang up.
Yeah. What branch are you, or were you?
We're both Army.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, maybe I should put Cameron on the phone and have him meet you out there, and you guys can go back and forth on that. Did I lose you, or did you guys cut out? Sorry.
Damn it. No,
Okay.
But go ahead. So you have our number. I would, if you could please text us a link or whatever so we can look you up. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not a one-stop shopper. So I would expect you to put your best foot forward.
Sure. Yeah. No. Yeah, totally understand. Trust me. I literally, every single property I look at, there's always 3 or 4 offers on the table, and I just simply always try to do, the best I can and try to offer what's going to make sense for me. And the day, if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, yeah, I mean, I completely understand. I will say this: I do set up quite a few property walkthroughs throughout the week, and funding is actually limited for us, despite what most people might think. So I do ask if I can get a decision within 24 hours from you on whether or not we are going to be able to move forward. The reason for that is because when I ultimately go and meet with the next seller that we're potentially going to buy from, I want to have that opportunity for them to say yes and for us to have the funding available. So totally get it that you're not a one-stop shopper. Just to let you know that I have some things that I worry about on that front too. So would that be a problem to would that be a problem at all? A 24-hour decision?
Well, that's a pretty quick turnaround, being that we're are coming from the West Coast,
Sure.
So we're in the week and we're trying to put everything in order. So not only are we working with the house, but we're also working with every other bill, everything that comes within a state.
Sure,
so,
yeah.
May not be realistic on our side, but it would definitely have to be like within the week.
I mean, we would do our best. We
Okay.
wouldn't sit there and jerk you off. We don't do that. Or whatever. Okay. Knows what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't sit there and toy with you. It would be.
No, I mean, it's very serious that we get things done and that we do it quickly. For, as you know,
Sure.
There's an inventory list that needs to be completed, so we need to have the information ready. So Like, we're coming down to make things happen, not to just sit around and hope that it happens on its own. So, but 24 hours is pretty quick for somebody coming into not knowing what we're going into, if that makes sense.
I mean, we have an idea of where we want to be, so.
I got you. Well, I'll tell you what, then can you be honest with me and just tell me, like, ultimately what it is you guys are looking for, so I can at least try to figure out ahead of time whether or not that number is even close to working for me?
Okay, guys, I'm going to stop it one more time right here. So this is a really good portion of the conversation, okay? And I'll tell you what I'm doing. Some of you may recognize it if you've ever listened to John Martinez, or, I mean, there's actually a handful of guys out there that are teaching this. But it is called advance agreement. So what I did is this guy basically came right out and said, well, I'm not a one-stop shopper, right? Yeah, totally get it. No worries whatsoever. Like, every single house that I've ever made an offer on, there's usually 3 or 4 other competitive offers that come to the table, and that's fine, right? So one thing I will say, though, is that I do have other people that I need to go and see, and unfortunately funding is limited. It's not always, just I can get funding whenever, wherever I want. And because of that, I need to give every seller that I meet with the same opportunity to work with us. And I need to be able to promise them that I can actually close if they make a decision to move forward. So I say that because I want the seller to understand, like, hey, totally get it. You've got multiple people that are going to be giving you offers. You're going to go out and you're going to price shop, right? But that being said, like, I also want you to understand where I'm coming from. I need you guys to make a decision so that I can make sure that the next person has that same opportunity to make a decision. So I use that to go into that justification, so to speak, and then I ask, like, is that going to be a problem, or can we make that happen, or would that be an issue, right? And that's what I did here. And then you can immediately kind of hear them, backpedal and kind of, I guess argue like, oh, 24 hours, that's a quick turnaround. And like, there's a lot of stuff on our minds and we just don't know if we have all that information and so on. Again, it's the same thing with every single seller, right? This is just you setting the expectation that you expect to have a decision made somewhat quickly. And that is so that when you actually go on the appointment, you can then reference this conversation when they say, well, I'd really just like time to think about it. Well, Mr. Seller, I mean, respectfully, I thought we agreed the other day that you were going to be able to give me a decision by the end of our conversation today. Right? I mean, that's exactly how that conversation is going to go, because you're going to remind them that I've got to go meet with somebody else. I have to give them that opportunity to be able to work with me, just like I'm giving you the opportunity to do that now. So I need to know by the end of our conversation whether or not we're going to be able to make this work. And again, either way, whether it's a yes or no, that's fine, right? I'm not pressing you, but I mean, this is something that has to be understood, and I need you to make a decision. This is the setup for that conversation and for fighting that objective in the future. The objective is, right, or the objection, the objection is I need time to think about it. This advance agreement is ultimately going to be your, I guess, your play, if you want to call it that, moving forward when you actually go on the property walkthrough to get around that objection. So really, really good stuff here. I wanted you to hear that. I wanted you to understand what that was and how that sounds so that you guys can incorporate that moving forward as well.
The last thing I want to do is waste your time, too, with everything that you guys have going on, of course.
Right. But right now, we're still collecting information as well, like the area information and, just kind of learning about it ourselves. We don't want to go into something like you wouldn't want to either. Just go in and take the first offer and realize, oh, my goodness, they're 9 minutes from here and there and this, and it could have been.
Right.
I mean, if you look up the, because number one, obviously, how do I say that?
We want to make an educated decision.
Yes,
not
there
just
you go.
A blind.
We're not
absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're very.
Oh, for sure.
We're very, we believe very strongly in karma, so we would not to mess you over, I guess is the right way to say that.
Yeah, and that's exactly, that's pretty much how we work as well. I mean, so that's part of the discussion that I would have with you at the property. Like, I literally bring my laptop just so that you guys understand where I'm coming from. I literally bring my laptop and I pull up the multiple listing service, the MLS, which is what realtors and real estate agents use to evaluate the market. I pull that up in front of you guys, and I literally sort it by the square footage. I look at sales over the last 6 months. I jump straight to your neighborhood, and I literally show you everything that's going on. So for me, it's I guess all that to say is that I completely understand where you're coming from as far as wanting to make sure that you're educated and you understand what's going on. I do that because I also believe that you should be educated as the seller. And that's also to, unfortunately, we do have people that are in this business in this area that aren't necessarily some of the most honest players. It's not always necessarily good business with some of those guys. So to take out any of those concerns, I review all of that, and I show you my numbers, and I show you why. And the reason for that is because I want you to understand that what I'm telling you is accurate, and it's correct, and it's what the market is saying, and it's not just Jacob trying to, get one over on you.
Right.
Well,
So all of that right there, guys, right, that's building trust and being able to, allow them or give them the opportunity to work with us and having a mutual understanding that, hey, nobody's here to screw anybody over, right? We're just here to help each other out. And if we can do that, great. If we can't, okay, that's fine too, right? But we do actually do this on every single one of our walkthroughs. We educate the seller as far as what the market is, what we think the repairs are going to be, right? And then working backwards from there on the number and then having the actual negotiation on site. We do that because that's sincere. Like, we do believe that the seller should be educated. So, and that was obviously a big objection that they had here as far as not being able to give me a decision the day of when we actually go to meet, right? So because they feel like they're not educated enough to be able to make that decision. So, okay, well, that's fine. We can address that. Like, we can educate you and get you up to speed, and then we can run through the numbers together and show you what that looks like from my perspective and have an honest conversation about what that looks like, right? So again, this is just being real, and this is, looking out for the seller's best interest just as much as you're looking out for yourself. And that goes back to what can I give, right, versus what can I get. So it's always about what you can give. It's always about helping the seller. And if you have to educate them on the market to do that, then you should be doing that. Again, that's just part of doing good business. So the other thing you heard me say, and I didn't talk about it last time, but I did actually try to get a number out of them over the phone, right? So I kind of started that conversation of like, hey, like, the last thing I want to do is waste your time. I definitely don't want to waste mine. Like, can you guys just tell me roughly like where you think you need to be, before I actually go and spend my time out there with you? Like, just want to see whether or not we're close. That's one way that I go about asking that question to try to get a number out of somebody. There's a few other ways to ask that question as well. I'm sure that you'll hear that on future directors' commentaries calls. At the end of the day, this is just another tool in the arsenal, right? But I did try to ask for that number before I went on the actual walkthrough. I didn't get it. I still don't get it by the end of the conversation, unfortunately. But I felt good enough about the conversation that we had that I would be able to get on site, have this open, honest conversation with them, and ultimately see whether or not we could make my number work. And that's kind of where we're at. So
say we do decide to go with you guys, what's the process look from there?
So basically, if you guys did decide to work with us after we come up with a number, I would send you the paperwork that would be for signature, of course. Basically, it's a purchase and sale agreement that says that we're going to take on the property. And that you agree to sell, of course, for X price. We would go ahead and set a closing date of your choosing. Now, knowing that you guys live on the West Coast, we can send a mobile notary when it comes to time of closing. So that way, obviously, you guys wouldn't have to worry about trying to figure out how to get back in, in the area and so on.
So it just becomes a basic.
Where you guys are.
House
Sale, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. We're gonna start title almost immediately, and we'll get the attorneys involved, and we'll put an EMD down, and we'll start the process, and just keep you in the loop. And at that point, Ashley would be the one that's communicating with you as far as how the closing is progressing, and if anything comes up during the title search. And then you guys would work directly with the attorney's office on getting anything that may come up resolved, and then we would go ahead and move to closing.
Okay. So
overall,
basically a 30-day process or less. Should be less.
yes. Yeah, so the only thing that holds closing up is title. Yeah. So as long as everything is clear on title and there's no liens, judgments, encumbrances, anything that we have to come through, as long as all of that is clear and easy, then yeah, I mean we can close. I think the earliest we've closed before is 8 days. So yeah, I mean if we can close sooner, then we will definitely do so, and it'll be written that way in the paperwork as well. It'll say on or before, whatever date we set for closing. Yeah.
All right.
Well, that's interesting. You say so the earliest you've ever closed is 8 days. So, that was obviously pre-COVID. So,
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah, so I will be honest with you. So, of course, we do have a clause in all of our paperwork now that accounts for COVID. Just everything with all the changes on a weekly basis. It's, for example, a lot of the city offices right now are telling you to do everything electronically, and if you do come in, you have to schedule a time, and it's been fun.
No, it hasn't been fun at all. We've had my stepfather passed away in February, and things were just beginning to close, and then they did close when my mom had passed away. So no, it is no fun doing all this COVID stuff.
No, it's a nightmare, unfortunately, and I feel like we're all just trying to get through the best we can. Unfortunately, I mean, it just kind of is what it is.
But I'm saying all this because I figure you guys are probably good at navigating all the pitfalls that occur during situations like this, or at least I would certainly hope so.
Yes, yeah. So COVID is one of those things where it's up in the air. We can only do so much. That just depends on kind of who we get at the city that day and whether or not they want to deal with us. Now, I will say we do have very good relationships, of course, with all these offices. So, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they, that we're the squeaky wheel and we get the grease, so to speak. So, but when it comes to more specifically, not to sound indelicate, but when it does come to probate situations, yes, we are very experienced with that, and we're very good at navigating those waters. So those are things that we work through as they come up, of course.
Okay, well, that sounds interesting. So I guess we'll see you on the property Tuesday at, 17:30?
That sounds good. Yep, I can be there at 5:30, no problem, tomorrow evening.
Okay, and we'll see how things go. Again, not going to commit to you right away unless everything feels right.
Sure.
And, and obviously how we feel about things. So,
absolutely. Yep.
We're working through, estate information and stuff and learning, how it all works, and that might take a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally understand.
And we're not. I mean, even though we're here for short bits of time, we can easily. We're not in a big hurry to do anything. So, it's not like, oh, we got to get this figured out. We are obviously going to look for the best deal and go from there. So we'll see what happens once you look at the house and see where we're at.
Sure, absolutely. Yep, yeah, and like I said, I totally understand that. I just want to make sure that I can be fair to future sellers, over the next week or two. So the reason I say that is, and this is just me being honest, right? So if you guys choose not to move forward with us, which is completely understandable, totally fine. Obviously, that's your decision. But if you guys decide not to, and then I go to another property walkthrough, let's call it 2 days later, and that seller does decide to work with me, I can't necessarily promise you that I can come back and buy your house. So that's why I let you know that up front. As like I said, I just like to give everybody the same opportunity to work with us, and if you can, great, and if you don't, I mean that's fine too. I completely understand that. So.
Okay, well, that sounds fair enough. You can't beat that.
Alrighty. Well, I look forward to meeting you both tomorrow. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your wife's name initially on the beginning of the call.
Oh, it's Heather.
Heather. Okay. Well, very nice to meet you both, Alan and Heather. And I look forward to meeting you both tomorrow at 5:30, and we'll go from there and see what we can come up with.
All right, sir. Look forward to meeting you.
Same here. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening and safe travels.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, guys, so that'll go ahead and wrap up the entirety of the call. You could hear there at the end, again, that I reset that expectation as far as the advance agreement, right? Making sure that, hey, totally get it. You want to go out, you want to price shop, you want to try to find the best offer that's going to work for you. Again, like the reason that I do that, right, is so that, I can offer the same opportunity to the next seller and ultimately choose whether or not they want to work with us. If they do that, I can't promise you that I'm going to come back and be able to buy your home. That's like giving a cookie and taking it away, right? So if you think of like a 5-year-old, right, you give them a cookie and then you take it away, what happens? They get scared, they get upset, right? They get angry. They want their cookie back, right? Same exact psychological concept right here. So I really appreciate you guys tuning in. I hope that this call was helpful as far as giving you some further insight into how we talk. I think that this was a really great one as far as the emotional side of it is concerned, right? As far as tuning into these sellers, understanding where they're coming from, why, really getting to understand the why, right? The why, what is going on? What is happening? Why are you motivated to sell? What is going on in your life that I can try to help you with as far as this property is concerned, right? That is what we are trying to figure out. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed it. So as far as some additional follow-up information, I didn't do this on the last call, but if anybody is looking for some additional information, you're always welcome to follow us at wholesalingoutofthebox.com. We do have various programs and so on that are designed to continue this educational type of platform when it comes to investing in real estate, especially into the wholesaling side of it. As far as potential resources for anything negotiation related, I will say that the number one book that I would recommend at the end of this particular episode would be Never Split the Difference. That is a book by ex-FBI negotiator Chris Voss, who is an absolute negotiation genius, for lack of a better term. This guy is just awesome. That book is absolutely fantastic. The information in it is I would say, hands down, the best negotiation book that I have read to date. It's the psychology behind it, the way that I'm talking here. It's going to really kind of put that into perspective as far as why it works and how it works. And just an absolute fantastic book to be able to wrap your head around, especially from a negotiation psychology perspective. So Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. If you guys are looking for any additional reading on the negotiation subject, I would highly recommend that. Outside of that, guys, I appreciate it again. If anybody has any feedback, please leave it below, or please reach out to us directly. I would love to get any thoughts that you have moving forward as far as ways to improve as far as these calls are concerned. And we'll try to get as much value out to you guys as we possibly can. So take it easy. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and look forward to the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.